been talking about when populations don't change, they're at equilibrium. And the equilibrium, there are actually a set of equations that describe this. It's a mathematical relationship. Because we're talking about numbers of genes here. And so we can describe mathematically the number of genes that are changing or not. That's Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. And these two guys said populations will stay at equilibrium if the following things are met. Well, we have no mutations. And we talked about what mutations do. They add variety. They add genes. We don't have anybody coming or going. It's a closed system. Population is not getting new blood or losing chunks of population. The population is really big because if it's small, genetic drift plays a big role in changing gene frequencies. All mating is random. And so yesterday we talked a little bit about how most species don't mate randomly. So name me a type of organism that does mate randomly.
Fish. Flies.
Some fish.
Plants.
Lots of plants. Ooh, Mom, I just went out and my car is covered in tree sperm. Trees, yeah, that pine pollen, that's just tree sperm. Yes, you're breathing in tree sperm. Love ruining everything for you. It's my goal. Some fish, most plants, trees for sure, corals. Corals just release big clouds of eggs and sperm. Where it goes, who it fertilizes, who knows. Starfish? I don't know. It's an excellent question.
One day, can we look it up? See how
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of aquatic and marine organisms that do mate randomly because they're in the water. They can just release eggs and sperm and have them fertilized. It's not that easy for land-based organisms. It's a lot harder. And of course, when you get up into like mammals, there's internal fertilization anyway. So we've kind of bucked that trend with some of the technology that people can use to reproduce, where human eggs can be fertilized outside the body. Whoa, that's crazy. You know?
Yeah, that's weird how they do that.
Yeah, it's. Yeah,
Don't the same nutrients and stuff have to go through?
Well, that egg is then implanted into a human uterus. You know, it can't grow. We can't grow a baby outside a uterus yet.
That'd be cool.
Yet. They probably will at some point. Okay, is it directly about this?
It's about mating.
No. Okay, so the other piece to this. So we said these first four criteria have to be met. The last piece is that there can't be any kind of selection going on. Okay? What kind of selection have we talked about in terms of evolution? Natural selection. So you can't, if a population is at equilibrium, there's no natural selection. So remember natural selection? Our old friend. Everyone's different. Life is tough. Lots die young. Those who have an edge survive. Natural selection acts on distributions. It changes them. So if natural selection is happening, then the population's not at equilibrium. There are three major ways. Well, first, let's say, are there times when natural selection is not happening?
Yeah.
Yes. They're rare, but they exist. So for natural selection to not be happening, one or more of those has to not be true. Did anybody here have on Skittle Island a distribution that went to all identical? Okay. Which condition of natural selection was being violated on Skittle Island for you? Well, we don't know that life wasn't hard. What color were all your Skittles?
Purple.
They were all purple. Every single one of them was purple.
No, we had different colors.
At the very end?
Oh, at the very end, we had just like all purple.
All purple. Which one of those conditions was not being met?
Everyone is different.
Yeah. There was no variation on their Skittle Island. Everyone was the same. It'd be like living in a world of clones. I would not want to live in a world that was all like me. That would drive me nuts. It would smack me. Yeah, if every organism is identical, there's no natural selection. There's no variation for natural selection to act on. Is there ever a situation where life isn't hard?
No.
So, let me tell you about rabbits. I've talked about rabbits a lot lately. I like rabbits. I raised rabbits when I was in 4-H. Rabbits eat green stuff. They mate like rabbits. Female rabbit has a gestation period of, I think, 27 to 32 days, and she can become pregnant again 14 days after her kits are born, and those kits can become pregnant at like 8 weeks.
What?
Yes. Cats are pretty prolific as well. So, Australia, the continent of Australia, the big old continent of Australia, had no rabbits. And I forget when, I want to say like the late 1890s, at some point, rabbits were introduced to Australia. There were no predators for rabbits. Nothing in Australia knew that rabbits were food. Guess what happened? Oh my Lord. They bred like bunnies, and they had no predators, and there was abundant food. And they spread across the continent of Australia like a wave of hungry locusts eating everything in their path. Imagine a tidal wave composed of bunnies. It's not so cute if you're a plant in their way. It's not so cute if you're a farmer.
No, yeah.
Not cute at all. And sometime look up rabbit-proof fence, because that was actually one of the control measures that they used in Australia, was they built literally a rabbit-proof fence across the continent to try to stop the bunnies. Marginally. So in that case, was there natural selection happening with those rabbits? Heck no, life was easy. Those bunnies got all the little bunny mates they want. They got all the food they want. Nobody's going to eat them. Life is sweet. And then people started killing them. And then life wasn't so sweet. But for a while there was no natural selection occurring. Their population was booming. Their distribution of traits was probably not changing that much. And also, this had come from a small founding population, so they probably didn't have a lot of genetic variability to start with. As long as there's no natural selection happening, it's possible for a population to stay in equilibrium. Now, there are 3 ways that natural selection can change distributions, can change frequencies. These are some of the new notes. So stabilizing selection is the first part. When you did your pre-knowledge on your vocabulary, what did you pick out of this entry? What here did you recognize and know, hey, I know something
Stable.
stable. What does it mean?
Balance.
Okay, balanced is a good one, yeah. Like if you're standing on a teeter-totter,
It's not
at this
figured
point
out.
you've got it stable.
Yeah.
Or those hoverboards, you know, like.
Things are kind of hard.
I heard. Stable, steady or balanced. Stabilizing selection tends to reinforce average. So when I think of this, I think of boring, middle-aged white guy wearing khakis and a white shirt and big white shoes. He's really average. He's not very interesting at all. But he's really stable. He's very dependable. If he tells you he'll be there at 3 o'clock, he'll be there at 2:59.
Who's that?
This is a made-up guy who lives in my head. It's a metaphor. It's a metaphor. So he's totally average in every way. He's not too tall. He's not too short. He's not too fat. He's not too thin. He's sort of an average shade of tan. He's not, too pale. He's not too dark. He's not too anything. He's not too smart. He's not too dumb. He's dead average. He's really boring. He's really stable. Stabilizing selection selects for average. So I want to take you back to, because I love to say things like beaver butt grease, right? Now it's more fun if I have you first period and I get to start off the day saying beaver butt grease, beaver butt grease, beaver butt grease. But the end of the day will do. You can go home thinking about beaver butt grease. So what is beaver butt grease?
Stuff they put in the bird.
Yeah, it's the secretions from their anal glands. Beaver butt grease sounds like more fun. And beavers reach back there, grab a hunk of anal gland secretions, and then rub it through their hair.
What do they do? Just push it out?
Yeah, I guess they squeeze. I don't know what they do.
Black?
No, sort of a yellowish, oily,
Not gross.
think of like,
Oil?
oh yeah. If
Don't pugs do that? Pugs do
Well, I was just going to talk about dogs. We're getting to doggy butt
that.
grease.
It's happened.
So, yes, it probably has.
It's so gross.
Oh yeah, I had a dog who had a chronic issue.
In a car.
Yeah. Okay. So let's keep with beavers right now. We're going to talk about the dog butt grease though. So I'm glad somebody has some experience. So beaver butt grease. Why do they rub their butt grease through their hair?
So they get warm.
So they get warm because they're what now?
They're cold-blooded.
They're not. No, they're warm-blooded. They're mammals.
They're in the water.
They're in the water. Why would you cover yourself in grease if you're in the
Because
water?
of body temperature.
Because it waterproofs you.
Yeah, waterproof.
It waterproofs you. Okay? So they're waterproofing their own fur. So a greasy beaver is a warm, happy beaver. Okay? So these little tiny beavers are rubbing their butt grease through their hair, and then they swim in the water, and then they go back in their lodge. But the water doesn't penetrate down to their skin, so they stay warmer. So it's really important for a beaver to have enough butt grease to thoroughly waterproof themselves. So average is awesome. Now, what happens if a beaver doesn't have enough butt grease? They'll get hypothermic. If you've ever been really wet on a 40-degree day out in the woods, out in the field, out in the yard is miserable because your body heat just gets sucked off you. Well, beavers spend their whole lives in the water. Like if they're not waterproof, they will die of hypothermia. So beavers that don't have enough butt grease, they die. They can't survive. Now, we mentioned doggy butt grease. So, dogs also have anal glands. They're located on either side of the rectum. They also secrete a yellow, smelly, oily fluid. Dogs, however, do not rub it through their fur. Thank goodness, or nobody would ever have a dog in their house. But, now in the wild, dogs eat a diet that means they have very hard stools. Those stools, when they come out through the rectum, push on the anal glands, and all that oil comes out on the poop. So like for wolves and coyotes and foxes, their poop gets all that oily musk on the outside, so when they poop around their territory, it's a smell marker to other canids, to other wild dogs, saying, hey, this is my territory, and here's my reproductive status, and here's my age, and here's, everything I just ate in the last 2 weeks. They get a lot of information. It's like a bulletin board. Domestic dogs often have a diet that they have soft stools, and so their anal glands don't get expressed, so very often domestic dogs get what? Plugged up anal glands. Ooh! And your dog is doing the butt scoot boogie across the living room, dragging those anal secretions across the rug. Now, who'd like to have a dog at home? Yeah, I have one too, and every time I see her doing the butt scoot boogie, I go, no, go outside. So for dogs, they do the butt scoot boogie. You take them to the vet. The poor vet tech releases their anal glands, and all is well.
How do they do that?
They stick a finger up their butt and they squeeze.
No.
It is something that my vet charges $5 for, and at this point in my life, I am very willing to pay somebody $5 so I don't have to do that.
Wait, didn't you have? Oh wait, never mind. That was fish.
I squeezed fish for eggs and sperm, but that's way less gross. I do not squeeze this dog's butt glands. When I was in college and I was really broke, I did, because I couldn't afford the $5 to pay the vet tech to do it. At this point in my life, I'm paying the vet tech $5
To squeeze your dog's butt.
to squeeze my dog's anal glands. Yep, not doing it myself anymore. Done with that part of my life. When you release them, there's a big squirt of yellow, wretched-smelling fluid. I used to do it in the bathtub. I would put her in the bathtub, do the thing, and keep a lot of paper towels and a lot of alcohol around, like alcohol spray.
Was she happy whenever?
She was horrified and then relieved, yes. So, let's talk about what would happen if you had a beaver with a plugged up anal gland. So with the dog, we either do it ourselves or we take them to the vet tech, they release it, nothing bad happens. A year later, they're doing it again, you take them back in. Okay, what happens to a beaver in the wild?
It dies. It dies because they can't get enough.
They get an infection. There is no veterinary care for wild animals. You get something plugged up, you die. It gets infected. Or it's plugged up and they can't get oil out anymore and they're not waterproof. Just on any level, having a plugged up anal gland is a big deal for a beaver. So if you're producing too much, you also die. So producing just the right amount is selected for. In stabilizing selection, the average is favored. The average is selected for. So if we look at this and we call it the bell of our bell curve, in stabilizing selection, the bell gets skinnier and taller. Okay? So the extremes are what don't work. The extremes are selected against. They're not a good fit. So in beavers, it either means you have a shivery, cold, wet little Castor canadensis in the pond dying of hypothermia, or you have a poor little Castor canadensis laying in a lodge somewhere going, I don't feel good, and dying of infection. Either way, just the right amount is the right thing. The mode, remember that mode is the most common measurement, is at the mean, which is the average. So the spike, the big point, is in the middle, and it's what's being selected for. So that's it. Questions about stabilizing selection. I think beavers are an awesome example for this. Beaver butt grease. And we get to say beaver butt grease, beaver butt grease, beaver butt grease. It's memorable. Okay. And yes, I am recording this. Yes, this will be on YouTube. Aren't I proud? That's okay. So, disruptive selection. Has anybody here ever been told they are disruptive? I have. Okay. That's okay. Okay. Disruptive can be good. What does it mean if you're disruptive, James? No, that's not what it means at all.
No, I meant to say but there's.
Oh, okay.
But not being, well, I don't know, because
Well, let me
that's just who I am.
You are disruptive by nature? Okay, well, that has not been the case in this room. I will say that a lot of change comes from disruptive individuals. So you can use your disruptiveness for good. You can use your disruptiveness for good, not for evil. If you're disruptive, you're shaking things up. If you're disruptive, you're not the average individual. So if you're disruptive, you're moving away from average. In disruptive selection, the average is not your friend. So that boring guy who's exactly average, he doesn't show up here. He's selected against here. Traits that are either at the low end or the high end are the good ones to have. So just the opposite of stabilizing selection. And so two things can happen in disruptive selection. Either the bell just gets shorter and fatter, or sometimes we get two bells out of this. Sometimes the distribution totally splits. But the extremes are the good places to be. Okay? Average doesn't work so well. If we have this double-belled system, how many modes are there? Two. What prefix means two? You ride a vehicle with two wheels on it and some pedals. Bi. This is a bimodal distribution. Bimodal distributions are typically the result of disruptive selection. So what I want you to do right, did anybody? Yeah, bimodal, exactly. Oh, B-I-M-O-D-A-L. So did anybody have in their Skittle Island, did they lose yellow? Did anybody end up with like purple and red?
No, he ended up with purple.
Just purple? Okay, but that's still single modal.
Oh.
If you ended up with like all one end and the other, and yellow for whatever reason was selected, or wait, what was the middle color?
Yellow.
Yellow, okay. If you got everything selected against yellow and that distribution split, that would be disruptive. So there are some cases we'll talk about tomorrow with that. What I'm going to tell you is right now, in the 2 or so minutes you've got left, we just covered a few of your vocabulary words. So look on that sheet. We've gotten disruptive selection, stabilizing selection, natural selection. We revisited Hardy-Weinberg. Yesterday we did a lot of different kinds of ways to non-randomly pick a mate. So you should be getting all of those. I would imagine I'll probably Today's Wednesday. I'll probably check those on Friday. We should have most of the words by then. So keep filling in that third column. Yes? I'm sorry?
What ones?
Well, we did today, we did natural selection, stabilizing selection, disruptive selection. Yesterday, we did, are proximity selection and sexual selection on there?
Yeah.
Sexual selection
So we
is.
did, I'll just do all this. No.
Yeah. Well, we haven't done directional selection yet. So we did, yeah, everything on the other page, and I'll probably check those Friday. How many?
Natural, stabilizing, disruptive.
Yes, yes. Okay.